Well, hello and welcome. What a historic day in aerospace. Only hours ago, NASA's Perseverance rover landed on Mars, and now Captain Mike Jesch will be presenting a second in a series of webinars designed to reintroduce you to the venerable Garmin GNS 430 and 530 navigators. If you missed the first one, you can watch it on YouTube, and if you have to leave tonight's webinar early, don't worry, a link for each will be included in an email following this presentation. Also, tonight's presentation does qualify for Wings credit, and if you registered using the same email address as your FAA Wings account, then you'll see a credit within a few days. If you don't, then follow the instructions in a follow-up email. For best viewing results tonight during the Zoom webinar, maximize the Zoom window to change your settings to standard view or follow host or speaker view. The view is of your preference, but definitely maximize the Zoom window. We will attempt to answer questions posted in the question and answer, the Q&A. If we don't get to your question tonight, it will be addressed in a follow-up email. These awesome navigation systems have been around for a long time. Not as long as Mike has, but yet many are not familiar with the basics, and I see many pilots struggling during instrument proficiency checks and flight reviews. Tonight, Captain Mike will teach you some of the great features of the GNS. Mike is a two-time master instructor and was recently named the 2021 Western Pacific Region Fast Team Representative of the Year. If you added up all of his flight time, you'd see that he's been in the air for nearly 3 years of his life. I'll let you do the math on that. In fact, he probably could have been to Mars and back a few times. When he's not out flight instructing, in a myriad of GA airplanes, he can be found flying around Southern California in his 182, where he's been using the Garmin 530 for nearly 10 years. As a side job, he flies the Boeing Dreamliner for a major U.S. airline. So Mike, welcome back. Teach us some more about the GNS. Mike? Don't worry, it's Par. He'll be here. Mike's on Mars. How apropos.
It was supposed to be here, huh? Yeah, well, it's been a busy day. It's not every day you get to do a landing on Mars. So I'm glad I finally got that out of my system. I can notch one on the red planet. So
how do you put that in the logbook?
Yeah, yeah, no opportunity for a go around or a touch and go or anything like that. And yeah, my hat's off to those crews. If you haven't been following along, there have been 3 separate missions to Mars this year, all of them arriving there just in the last week. Had the first one from Saudi Arabia. I got into orbit last week, and China has a lander. It's in orbit right now. The lander's going to land separately, and then today ours landed. And I don't care how many times you watch that, it's still a modern miracle to me that these people can navigate these things all the way across millions of miles of space and hit. Last I heard, they were within about 20 or 30 meters of where they wanted to be.
It is very cool, and because of the lack of nav aids on Mars, I guess the database for the 430 on Mars is pretty small, pretty quick upload.
Yeah, and it goes out of date right after launch. So they launched it 6 months ago, and so now you got to figure out how to get an update of your Garmin database.
The problems with a 56-day flight or more.
Exactly. So welcome, everybody. Thanks, Brian, for that great introduction and for running the behind-the-scenes show for me tonight here. Had a great response from our last episode a couple of months ago, and I've been getting just a ton of emails. My apologies for not answering all of them. I just had too many. I just couldn't answer them all. I tried to answer the good ones anyway, so if you got an answer back, you know that was a good one. Otherwise, we'll get you next time. So what I want to do here is I do have another little intro slideshow that, let me see, I need to get back to the presentation here and share this screen. Just so you have an idea of what's going on. Brian is going to man the Q&A box. The chat box usually gets a little bit too busy for us to try to keep up with. But what I will say is if you chat something in there, Brian and I look back through there after the webinar, and we're gathering ideas and answering questions that were asked in there. So even if we don't respond tonight during the show, they do get responded to eventually. So for part 2 here, Thanks to everybody involved here. First off, Brian, for being my producer behind the scenes and for running the show for me on Zoom. The Ventura County 99s are covering this particular account we're using tonight. So I welcome all the 99s who are here, in particular the Ventura County 99s. Brian and I have been teaching classes as part of their pilot proficiency series for years. That series has gone on for 20 years now and has been incredibly successful and a lot of fun to teach, get first-rate instructors from all around the country to participate in this, and then people like Brian and me to help have a little bit of fun along the way. I'd also like to thank the FAST team. Yeah, as Brian mentioned, I am the 2021 Western Pacific Region FAST Team Rep of the Year. I'm very honored to have won that prize. And unfortunately, I didn't make the National Rep of the Year. That went to a gentleman from Iowa who's a balloon expert. And when I saw what he's doing around balloon safety, I was humbled and truly impressed with what he's been able to do. And yeah, he deserved to win it. So congratulations. I wish I had his name written down here. Also, I put this up on YouTube, as Brian mentioned. That YouTube has been watched by about 5,000 or so people in the last couple of months. So that's just great. It's terrific. That music we were playing during the slideshow, if you're an AOPA member, and even if not, you should go find this playlist. They just released this last week. It's an AOPA Top 100 Aviation playlist. My friend David Toulis is a writer and photographer for AOPA and host of their weekly podcast, Hangar Talk, he and Ian Twombly. They just interviewed a pilot and a musician who's featured in that playlist. And I thought, I should use that playlist instead of trying to put my own together. And I almost didn't want to start the show. That was such great music. I wanted to keep it going. But most of all, I want to thank you, all of you, the several over 1,000 online with us now. A couple thousand have watched either the live broadcast of the last one or the replay. You're the reason we do this. The reason I fly with you guys and I see people doing things or not doing things, and I get email questions all over the country, and you give me the motivation. I know that you guys have an interest in this and you'd like to learn more. So you're the whole reason we're here. And hopefully you enjoy this program too, and we keep on going. Here's my contact information. If you have any email questions you'd like to ask, please use that email address. I do have a YouTube channel. If you just go to YouTube and look for my name, you'll see about a half a dozen or so programs that I have up there right now. This program will be added as soon as we can get it up there, probably by tomorrow. And if you like and subscribe to it, you will get notifications when future content gets added. And Brian also has a web page that has, we're continuing to add and refine that with resources and so forth to point you in the right direction for more help. And also the updates to new programs will be put on that as they come up. So we tried this as an experiment last time, and it worked pretty well for us. If you feel like you enjoy your program here and you want to try to encourage us to do a little bit more, and if you have a few extra shekels laying around in your couch cushions, you can fling it our way if you like, either through Zelle or Venmo or PayPal. And we really appreciate your contribution and give us motivation to keep on doing it. So tonight, I'm going to start with here's a rough outline. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the basics of the simulator. Last month, I just kind of jumped in and started using the simulator, and I didn't really discuss how to use it. So I'm going to spend a few minutes on that. I'm going to dive into the map pages, the waypoint, the aux pages in the 430 and the 530. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the OBS button. I just touched on it for one thing, I think, last episode, and it's both the most confusing button and the most powerful button. If you know how to use it and know when to use it and when not to use it, it can really be a cool tool to help you solve a couple of problems. Whether you're a VFR pilot or an IFR pilot, it's got a couple handy uses for you. I think we're going to dive into approach procedures a little bit more on this. So this is the part for the VFR pilots, probably not going to get a whole lot out of this, but if you're an instrument pilot or an instrument student, I'm going to dive in a lot more on how to perform an approach, whether it's an RNAV GPS approach or whether it's a terrestrial approach like an ILS or VOR type approach. I'll show you how you can still use the navigator to make flying that type of approach a little bit easier. We're going to talk a little bit about the flight plan button, how to work that, probably just kind of touch on that lightly tonight. And there's a lot of material here, so I'm not sure how deeply we'll be able to get into it, but we will put in a basic flight plan, show you how to do that. And then if we can get around to it, if we still have time in about an hour or so, then I'll try to touch on how to use it for SIDS and stars. And we'll introduce a little bit about VNAV, a couple extra tools in the box that'll make your flying just a little bit easier and safer along the way. Future subjects, I plan on diving in a little bit more on user waypoints, how and when to use those, peripheral devices. And by this, what I mean are things like a ADS-B in and out, flight stream. For instance, I have a flight stream 210 in my airplane, and that allows me to use my GNS 530 that's mounted in my panel. I can connect it to ForeFlight mounted on my iPad. So now I can enter a flight plan on my iPad in ForeFlight. I can tap a button and it's going to show up as a flight plan in my Garmin 530. And it makes entering that sort of stuff super easy and very, very cool. If you would like to get an individual one-on-one session to do a little deep dive on this, this is actually, I'll get on that just a little bit more. I got the wrong, no, that's the right one, communityaviation.com. This is a program just starting on the East Coast here. They've got several experts. Rich Stoll is involved with it right now. Doug Stewart, Larry Jarkey, and a few others. I'm coming on speed with this right now. If you follow that link, you can book a private one-on-one session. It'll cost you a couple of bucks, but we'll do something a little bit more tailored to what you want to learn about the 530. So the first introductory session will just be used to determine where you are, what we need, and we can extend that, add another segment on. So if you go to that webpage, you can schedule your own session directly with me. It goes through this website, and you can also visit some of these other expert flight instructors, just incredibly knowledgeable people on all aspects of aviation. Rich Stoll, the expert on stalls. Larry Jarkey is an expert on simulators. You can fly your own home simulator with Larry as a remote instructor, things like this going on. So it's just spooling up and you're right on the leading edge of that. Now for tonight, if you haven't done this already, this is the website to get the simulator off of the Garmin website. And if you use the link from last month or in the invitation we sent out, we inadvertently had the wrong number in there. Sorry about that. And that's an older version of that simulator that's not compatible with modern versions of Windows. And I believe it only simulates the 430. It doesn't do the 530. So if you get this one, it works in Windows 10. It'll do the 430 and the 530. And this is the one I use for tonight, for the program tonight. So that having been said, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to spool up my navigator here, if I can get to it. And I need to close a bunch of stuff here and share the correct screen. Where did it go? There we go. Well, now this is crazy, Brian. I lost the button. Oh, there it is. The one that says share screen. It went away for a little bit.
It's right there. See it?
Oh yeah, I found it.
Good. There
All
you
right.
go.
So now hopefully you should see my trainer window here. This should pretty much fill up your screen. You'll see a Garmin 430 on the top half, and you'll see the controls down there at the bottom. This is what you'll see when you activate that trainer that you downloaded through that link that I just sent you. And the first thing I want to point out to you is we got a couple options here. The main thing is you need to determine which unit you want to use to simulate. Right now I have the 430 selected. You could select a 530 if you wanted. One of the problems with the simulator is when you change this, you have to restart the entire program. It shuts it down. You have to start again. So it's a little bit of a pain, but I figured I'd start with the 430 tonight, just because several of you did send me emails and saying, hey, can you spend a little bit more time on the 430? And last program was all about the 530. So we'll start with the 530. And the top portion here is a representation of the 430 installed in your airplane. The bottom half, you have an HSI. So if you've never flown with an HSI, if you don't know what that is, it's sort of a combination of your directional gyro and your VOR indicator head, your CDI and your OBS. The right-hand side are your autopilot controls. And we're going to use this to put the simulator in motion, fly it around, and be able to use various parts of the 430 in live flight, simulated live flight. And so the first thing we're going to do is turn it on, and you're going to see this is going to be very similar. Notice that this copyright date is old. This program is very old, 2006. They're not planning on updating it anytime soon. I mean, they stopped making these devices, so they have no motivation really to update this to the modern software. It's an older version of the software, so there's some features that aren't installed in it. Get my mouse out of the way there. So it's going to go through the series of screens, and you're going to end up on this one. And this one, I really want you to take a moment. Don't just press enter right away, because you need to see, especially if you're a VFR pilot, if you don't do a lot of IFR flying, you need to look at this expiration date on your database. If that expiration date is in the past, if this database is no longer current, you can't use it for a lot of IFR flying. Last time I mentioned this document that needs to be in your airplane when you're flying. This is the flight manual supplement for it. And in here, it's going to tell you that you can use the navigator with an out-of-date database for en route navigation, as long as you verify that all the fixes and waypoints that you're using are in the correct place. It's also going to tell you that you cannot use this to do any instrument approaches. So no RNAVs, no VOR approaches using this. You're stuck with it just as an informational, as a reference thing only with an out-of-date database. So get your database up to date. Once you've verified that that's okay, you can click the enter button. It'll take you to the next screen. And again, this is another one, a lot of pilots just skip right by this. I spent more time on this in the last program, so I'm not going to dwell on it here. But the main thing I want to show you here is all these, in this upper window, it's going to tell you where your lateral CDI and lateral flag is, your vertical CDI and vertical flag. The main thing I want you to see is this OBS indicator right here. And here's your OBS pointer, this needle. If you have a regular, kind of a more normal sort of a VOR indicator in your airplane, you're going to have a little OBS knob. In this simulator, we have this yellow knob down here. It moves the pointer. And you'll see when I move that pointer, the OBS value changes in the navigator. And this should match where the arrow on this needle is pointing. So it's pointing at about 050. I see 050 on my OBS. So that means the correspondence between the navigator and the indicator is correct. And that's the main thing we want to see here. The other numbers, the RMI and the DTK, don't worry about those. That's not a big deal at all. So now that we've verified that, we can click enter. Now, if you have a little bit more sophisticated airplane, if you have a fuel flow sensor, perhaps, you can enter that data in the set full fuel button. In my airplane, I created a checklist in here. So this is what I use for my after start and before takeoff checklist I have in here. I could go to those. And with the simulator, it's really hard. Every time you start it up, it forgets everything you have stored in there. So it doesn't make any sense for me to enter a checklist into here. So once you verify that all these indications are correct and your OBS correspondence is correct with your needle, you press enter, and it's going to bring you out briefly to that status page. And in your airplane, you're going to see as it is able to tune in the various satellites and indicate the signal strength of the signal it's receiving from the satellite. You can see these bars moving, as well as the little D's in there. You can see the differential signal that's coming from whichever satellite it's coming from. And it takes at least 4 satellites and preferably 5 to be able to get you a good position. It'll monitor, I think, up to about a dozen satellites. The more you have, the more accurate it is. Now, the first thing you'll notice here is we have a flashing button. I mentioned this in the previous episode, and a flashing message button just drives me nuts. That means this unit is trying to tell you something. You need to pay attention to it. What's it trying to tell me? You push the message button, and it says, do not use for navigation. That's a good idea. I don't think it's ready to navigate my seat around out of my office here. But the other one here, I created a scheduler in there. I'm going to touch on this in just a moment. An automatic timer that tells me, hey, I need to do an oil change. So I've looked at those messages. I push it. At least now it's not flashing, but it's still trying to tell me something. That do not use for navigation message is still up there. All right, so let's start this. I want to show you a little bit about flight controls on the simulator here before we get to flying. And for that, what I'm going to do is we'll use the autopilot controls down here. We can set it in motion and start it flying with this throttle control here. You can go up to 600 knots. So if you really want to see what it's like flying the jets, you can do that. For our little airplanes, I'd like to play around at 100, 120 knots, something like that. As we do that now, we can zoom in here a little. You'll start to see the airplane moving. We can set the altitude, and it really doesn't do a whole lot for the simulator. This particular simulator, it doesn't care about altitude. It doesn't care about terrain. It'll fly you right through a mountain and keep right on going. But what I do want to show you just briefly, if we go over to the nav3 page, this is your terrain page. You see the yellow terrain. That means this is terrain that's more than 100, but less than 1,000 feet below you. So you're getting kind of close. You need to pay attention to this terrain. If we climb up a little bit more, once the simulator gets up to this altitude, you'll start to see this yellow terrain is going to start to turn black. And if we zoom out, we'll see some red zones. These are the mountains. So these mountains are above you. The yellow is you're getting close to it. And if it's black, then you're at least 1,000 feet away from it. So now and then, if you fly near some terrain, you might have seen this before. You get a message pops up, or even a low altitude alert and a little window pops up. That's this whole thing, that it's got a terrain database in there, and it's trying to help you. It wants to keep you from running into a mountain. And so for the purposes of what we're doing in the simulator tonight, the altitude doesn't matter a whole lot. It's just kind of, at this moment, just a little gee whiz kind of a thing. Okay, so that's the flight simulator controls here. Right now, we can put it in the heading mode, or we can put it in the nav mode. In the heading mode, it's going to follow our heading bug. So we do a turn, it's going to roll out on that turn. Right now we have red here for nav because we don't have any flight plan entered into the database. And you can see it's showing some intersections here. It's showing some airspace here. This is a part I didn't really spend a lot of time on in our last presentation because there is just so much data here. But let's make this thing stop for a moment and move around. And this happens to be right near my home airport. BWALT is a step-down fix halfway down our circling VOR Alpha approach. Fullerton Airport is up here. So what I want to show you, and this is true both in the 430 and the 530, if you're on this page, you can just push where it says push cursor, and you get this little flashing cursor here, this little red thing, and you can move that around with the buttons. Move it horizontally with the outside button. You can zoom it and move it over to some other spot. The little button will move you vertically somewhere. So between the two of these, you can move that cursor around. And when you get to a spot there, so the very top of the window is indicating, here's your map pointer. It tells you the latitude, longitude of where that pointer is. It tells you it's on a 063 bearing from our current location. It's 1.7 miles away. But what I want to show you, the cute little thing here is if you press the enter button, you get a menu that pops up. It says you want to review airspace or you want to create a user waypoint. So for instance, you're pointing around at something, maybe you find a lake and you want to make a user waypoint, you can do that. And that's for a future program. But this review airspace is very powerful. You can click enter there and it tells you, okay, at that spot where I tapped on it, and it's only going to show you one type of airspace. It shows you the most restrictive type of airspace. So that's the class Bravo airspace. It's right near Los Angeles. It tells me the vertical limits at that point where that cursor was. The bottom of that airspace is 6,000. The top is 10,000. And if I just press enter, it goes right back to the map so you can see that again. If we come back in here now, you can take this big knob and scroll it down here to frequencies and click frequencies, and it's going to give you the frequencies for the airport that's the home base of this airspace. So for instance, if you wanted to see, if you wanted to call some ATC and get some flight following, let's say, you can scroll your big knob down here to one of these approach frequencies. And watch this now. Here's your COM window. I showed you about how the COM and nav frequencies worked. The highlighted button right there, if I press enter while this frequency is highlighted, it puts that frequency in the standby window. So now I can click the swap and make it the active frequency. And now I'm talking on COM1 and I'm calling SoCal TRACON in that case. So you don't even have to get out your chart and look up the frequencies. They're all stored right there in the 430 or the 530. Once you're done with this, you can scroll the big knob back up there to done, highlight that. You can press enter and it takes you back to the map mode. So that's a couple of fun little tricks with the cursor in the nav on the nav page 2. And you get rid of the cursor just by pushing that cursor button. You push it to get the cursor, you push it again to get rid of the cursor. I want to show you, in the last program, I showed you the nav page 1 on the 530. I said it was a 70-degree arc. It's actually a 120-degree arc on the nav page 1. The 430 nav page 1 is completely different. It's just a display of numbers, and there's nothing else in there. I'll show you this again once we get a flight plan put in there. But this top box is our course deviation indicator, indicating how far off of our course we are. The second box shows you how we're navigating. We're navigating from something, we're navigating to something over here. So it tells you what you're navigating. And the lower box here is, here's your desired track. So from where you activated your direct to or along this course that you have selected, it's going to show you what that track is supposed to be. It's going to show you the distance from your present position to that waypoint that's marked over here. The track is your actual track across the ground. So ideally, in the perfect world, if you're navigating on course, your desired track will be written over here and your actual track will match it. If they're the same, you're on course or you're not deviating from course. In the lower portion here, we get the ground speed, we get the estimated time en route, so how long it's going to take you to get to that fix that you marked up here. And the altitude that we're indicating, that's a GPS altitude, that's not a barometric altitude, so air traffic control doesn't care about that particular altitude. So that's the nav page 1 and 2. I touched on nav page 3, which is terrain. And again, if you have one of those peripheral devices, such as a ADS-B receiver that's providing weather and traffic data, you'll have a couple extra pages on here. I've got a video from my phone. I'll try to show you a little bit later that'll show you that. The next page over is your information from your departure airport. In this case, it just happened to pick the airport we're closest to. It's got your frequencies. Again here, if you want to put one of those frequencies in your box without twisting the knobs over there, you can just dial down here and highlight the frequency you want, press enter, it goes into the standby window, press swap, it makes it active, and you're good to go. Nav page, the next page is another navigation page. This is your actual heading or ground GPS track. So 026, you can see it's just about 026. You got your ground speed, you got your altitude, you got your current latitude, longitude, you got the current time. In this case, we have it set up to be local time. You can program it to be Zulu if you prefer. And it's showing us our nearest airport is Fullerton. We're on we're 239 degrees from it. So we're on the 239 radial from the airport to here, and we're 3.3 miles away. And the next page is that satellite status page I showed you a little while ago. So this one obviously is simulating it. We can't show you the actual one from the airplane. But it's going to show you, give you a graphical representation here of where the satellites are in relation to you. And then it's going to show you the relative signal strength for each one. And so obviously a higher bar is a stronger signal, is a better signal. And you tend to get the strongest signals from the satellites that are directly above you. So in this case, you can see we have satellite 15 is directly above us, and satellite 15 has the highest signal strength. Over here on the horizon off to the north behind us, that's satellite number 1. It has a pretty weak signal. So it's looking for satellites with a good geometry, at least a little bit of distance apart from each other, and a good strong signal strength away from the horizon. And it'll take the best ones it can and calculate your position. Then you've got a horizontal field of merit, a vertical field of merit. These are an indication of the accuracy of your position, and the estimated position uncertainty, it's only 0.03 of a mile. So that's pretty good. And the last page here is one major difference between the 430 and the 530. On the 530, we have a separate button down here for VNAV. On the 430, there isn't room, so it's another page on the nav page. And I'm going to come back to this a little bit later because I've got a lot of material I want to cover tonight. So we'll cover this if we have time. Otherwise, we'll chalk that up and put that on a to be shown later kind of a thing. And again, on the 430, just like the 530, if you ever get lost and don't know where you are, just push and hold that clear button for 2 seconds. It's going to take you back to the nav page 1. All right, how are we doing with any questions here, Brian?
Well, there's 462 questions. I figured we'll just
Oh,
answer those real quick.
oh yeah, sure. We can do that.
No, we've got a
Okay.
few here. How does the GNS know when an oil change is due?
All right. Let me dive just a little bit ahead here. We're in the nav book, and I talked in the last episode about waypoints and aux pages and nearest pages. If you go to the aux page here, you on the 430 and 530 and your installation, depending on these peripherals you have installed, you may have more pages. So I can't tell you which page number it's on precisely, but what you're looking for is this item called scheduler. And so let's go down and take a quick look at that and give ourselves a cursor. We're going to scroll down here to the scheduler and press enter and go into the scheduler. You can see here that I typed this item in as an oil change, and I told it that it's an event. You can have it as an event. You can make it a one-time thing. You can make it a periodic timer. In this case, I happen to set it up to occur on February 15th at 23:59. So this thing triggered on the 15th at 23:59, and it says, okay, I got this message. I haven't shown him yet. You start up the machine, it's going to give me that message. One of the things I do in my airplane is I make a periodic timer. This works in the 530 and the 430. And here's my biggest go-to thing. Here's what I do with it. We take the big knob and highlight the time. I'm going to scroll over here. And remember, I showed you that real tedious way to enter your numbers using these knobs and the buttons and everything. I set a 30-minute timer. And here's the way I generally do use it. I set this up and I say, I spell out check fuel. You can kind of get the idea. It's very tedious to enter this, and I don't know of any way to enter this in, some kind of automatic technique. So I'm just going to say check. So you spell that out, and every 30 minutes, I'm going to get a message that pops up that says check fuel. So if you're flying an airplane like a Bonanza or a Mooney, for instance, that you don't have a both selection on your fuel, you only do left or right, I have this message pop up. And that's a reminder to me to check fuel. And it's not just change tank, but I want to look at the installed indicator. I want to look at my totalizer. I want to look at my watch. I want to look at all the tools I use to look at fuel and verify that I'm still happy with what it says. If my totalizer doesn't agree with my gauge, then I'm going to look for a place to land. And there are a lot of stories out there that people have told. You can find them online. Somebody saw something in there they didn't like. They landed, and it turned out they had a leak. So their totalizer didn't know about it, but their installed indicator did. So this is where all that information is on the check, on the scheduler. I have a 30-minute timer set up for fuel check. I have a 30-hour timer set up for oil change. And you can make, I think it allows 3 different timers, whatever type you want. And the 430, it looks like it's only 2. So in the 530, you can do 3.
That's amazing. I wasn't sure if that was a serious question or not, but that's really cool. I didn't know about that feature.
Well, you give me something like that, I'm going to run away with it.
That's awesome. Another question about the simulator. How do I reposition the plane to my home airport on the simulator?
That is an excellent question. Let's do that. Let's come up here to options. The second item in the options menu is initialize position. So you can type in a position. Let's say I'm at Fullerton. I'm going to use that same tedious scroll and punch thing. I'm going to type in KFUL, and it knows about it. Here's the latitude, longitude. So now we've set that position. Let's see, we're on the waypoints page. If I come back here to nav, now you'll see, we can zoom way in, and you'll see I'm at the airport reference point for Fullerton Airport. So we're going to use this a few more times over the course of this evening. I'm going to put the airplane in some position that's going to make some of our activity a little bit easier.
Very cool. And lastly, is there an easy way to put coordinates in as a fix?
Well, one way to do it is that's getting into user-defined waypoints. I can kind of cheat, and I come over here and I give my little menu the same way that we did that review airspace or create user waypoint. Let's go ahead and do that. This is something I wanted to do tonight anyway, because this is a really powerful tool. Create user waypoint. And no matter how you get to this page, this is what it looks like once you get to the user waypoints. and we can make this user waypoint. If you just press enter, it's going to create that waypoint at the current location where the cursor was. If you want to make a waypoint somewhere else, let's say, for instance, we want to make a waypoint that's the Paradise VOR. So we can dial in Paradise, PDZ. One common one is on the Paradise. Okay, and always press enter, don't press push cursor. If you press push cursor, it goes away and it resets the box back to what it was before. So always press enter. Can't tell you how many times I did the wrong thing. You push enter, and we can set up one, for instance, on the Paradise 270° radial. And we can either put it, say, 24 miles away. We can do it like this. We can put a waypoint there, or we can do what we call it at work, place radial, place radial. So that's where this waypoint is right now. If we wanted to do where two intersections, two radials cross off of VORs, for instance, let's say in this case we have the Pomona VOR. So yeah, Pomona's good. We can say the Pomona 180. So south of Pomona and west of Paradise. Oops, 180. And we'll set this to 0. Okay, so that's where our location is going to be. That happens to cross 14.9 miles away from Paradise. It calculates that. And you can name this. You can give it your own name, or you can accept the name that it gives you. What do we want to name it?
Mike.
Call it Mike.
Now, did it come up with the north latitude, the northwest latitude, longitude position from that? Is that what showed up there?
Yes, it determines the latitude, longitude based on where these radials cross. So I can call it just that if I want. Another option we have, if you know the latitude, longitude of a waypoint, you can actually come down here and just type that latitude and longitude in.
And I think that was what the question was how do I enter a latitude, longitude as a fix? And that right there is it.
It's the same page. You got 3 different ways to enter a waypoint right on this page. You can either do a place radial distance, place radial, or a latitude, longitude.
Very cool.
So this is what I used. I don't know if you've noticed this yet, but all of the charting information that we're getting from the FAA now is updated always on a 56-day cycle now. So now what we're getting is more frequent updates. For years, the Grand Canyon chart was dated as of the early 2000s. Now there's a current Grand Canyon chart. Now they've added waypoint names for the beginning and end of the corridors over the Grand Canyon. It used to be just a latitude, longitude. So you had to manually create these waypoints, and you can go to the chart and read the latitude, longitude and type these in, and then name your user waypoint whatever you wanted. Like I used the fossil corridors. So I put an FSSLN for the north side and FSSLS for the south end of it. And then they're in a user waypoint, I can put them in a flight plan just like everything else. So that is user waypoints. Okay, great. You guys have got ahead of me on a couple of things here. And we're going to come back to some more of that.
You got time for one more waypoint question, or you want to move
sure.
on? Someone has trouble with the destination airport being part of the route in addition to the approach. Any workarounds on that?
Okay, so I'm going to guess here, and please correct me if I've got this wrong with some additional points in that question. But one thing, this is getting into IFR techniques, but let's say we're going to fly from here to, let's go to Brian's home airport. We'll go up to Camarillo. So what a lot of pilots do, and frequently I'll do this myself. This is getting, I wanted to do a little bit more of a deeper dive on the flight plan section. So here we are. We go to Fullerton to Camarillo, let's say, and just put that in. So here's our flight. Now notice our nav flag went away because now we have a route. If we close the flight plan, we're not moving yet here, so it's still showing red. Let's start this thing moving just for kicks. And if we go to nav page 1, it's okay. So it's navigating direct from Fullerton to Camarillo, and I'm still on a heading mode, so it's not doing anything. That's why we have the red here. If I go nav, let's see. So now it's going to navigate over there and it's going to start flying that line. So now I think where we're going with this question is you want to put an approach in at Camarillo. So we'll jump ahead a little bit here and do this procedure, select approach, and it's going to default to the Camarillo airport, and it's going to give us our list of approaches. So we can select the airport or the approach we want. Let's say we want to do the RNAV Yankee to runway 26 right. So we highlight that one, press enter. And now it gives us the list of transitions. We can either take vectors to final, and if you remember last time, I gave you a strong caution against using vectors to final. In almost all cases, there are a few that it's okay, and we'll try to touch on some of those. We can highlight down here, and let's say I want the Sadie intersection. It's not an initial approach fix, but it's a feeder fix. So we're going to program that one in, and look at this now. It gives us the overview of this map. We can zoom in a little bit. Starts out here at Sadie. It's going to give us LNAV plus V guidance, and it asks us if we want to load or activate. In this case, I'm just going to load it. Okay, so now you can see our flight plan has from Fullerton directly to Camarillo, and then it has the approach. And it starts out from the fix that we talked about here. Sadie is the one we selected. The next one is Kitech. That's the initial approach fix. Then we got Nakik. How do you say these things, Brian? I have no idea. Juzzy is our final approach fix.
NASIC, AEG, yeah, they're typical.
Waves is the missed approach point, and it goes out here to the missed approach hold is at Hatley. So if you don't do anything else, touch this flight plan button, we'll come back out here. I'm not sure why we're still showing red here. It's navigating just fine. You can kind of see we got Camarillo up there at the north end of this route. At the other end, it's going to go, since it's pink, you know that that's the active waypoint. So it's going to the airport, but we don't want to go all the way to the airport. We want to get on the approach before we get to the airport. So when it comes to flying IFR, filing IFR flight plans and planning IFR flights, what I do is I don't file to the airport. I file to the initial approach fix for the approach I want to do. So that way, if I get cleared as filed, which, you know, sometimes there's a miracle that occurs and I do get cleared as filed, I'm not going to go all the way to the airport. I'm going to take that out. So here's what I do. There's a couple different ways to solve this problem. One of the things I do is I just come down here and I push clear, and I want to remove Camarillo, highlight yes or no, click on enter, and yes. So now we're navigating from Fullerton direct to Sadie, and it's going to go fly the approach just perfectly. So you can see we turned a little bit, and our desired track is 272. So I want to set the navigation bar here to be on the course that I'm supposed to be flying. You'll see I'm off course just a little bit because I selected a new course. Our bar is coming in, our autopilot's in nav mode, so it's going to track that and everything's good. So there's a couple other ways you can do it. You can just not ever put the airport in. When you go to the procedure page, for instance, we could come down here to select approach. It starts out in the approach box. You see it's highlighted behind the top level menu here. That's your approach that's highlighted. You could get rid of the cursor here and scroll a big knob up here to the airport and change your airport. Let's say we wanted to go to Van Nuys instead. This is another way to do it. And like any good tool, there's a lot of ways to do it. A lot of different ways to be used. So let's go to Camarillo, or to Van Nuys rather. So now we said, yes, we want to go to Van Nuys. And now you press enter and it comes down to the approach box. So which approach do we want to do at Van Nuys? Let's take the VOR DME or GPS. So we can use GPS for this one. And then which transition do we want? We want vectors, caution, caution, or do we want Fillmore, Gorman, Percy, something else? Let's pick SOGS. We saw that one on the earlier approach. So now it doesn't give us the load or activate. We already have one in there. We'll go ahead and just activate this one, and it's going to navigate present position direct SOGS, and now we're on the approach. So this is a caution one, though. Remember, when you hit activate, the navigator is going to drop whatever it's doing, throw the rest of the flight plan out, and it's going to go from your present position directly to the initial approach fix on the transition that you selected. So it's going direct to SOGS. And we can see that here on nav page 2. You see that our active waypoint is SOGS. If you go to nav page 1, it says we're going directly to SOGS. And here's our course deviation indicator. Here's our desired track and our actual track, time, speed, and distance. So hopefully that answered that question. And let's see. What else have we got here? The subscription for this is available directly from Jeppesen. You have to get a Jeppesen account and subscribe, and then you download the data yourself. You do the install. I haven't been out to the airport to grab my programmer and show that. It's kind of beyond the scope of what I wanted to do tonight. But it's a manual process that you have to pay, and then Garmin's pretty proud of their subscriptions, so they will charge you some money for it. Now notice again, we got our flashing message button. It's telling us we need to set the course to 322. So if I set the course to 322, the message will go away. Next time I pop it up, that one goes away. So it's just a reminder. The box is telling you, hey, dummy, set that needle so you know which way you're going. Okay, so I think for now, I'd like to switch back over to the, well, actually, let's not for just a moment. I did have a couple of questions that came in from that last one about how do we configure this screen with the boxes on the side. So while we're flying along, I can do that. You're on this page. If you press the menu button, you're going to get this menu. You can turn those data fields off if you want. That's what that looks like. So you might consider turning them completely off if you're using an iPad that's connected to your airplane, for instance. In ForeFlight or WingX or some of these tools, you can put a bar of indicators down at the bottom of the screen, and it'll show you ground speed, desired track, course deviation, time to stay, whatever it is. So you don't need them on the 430. And in the 430, that real estate on the screen is at a premium. So that might be worth turning those data fields off. But if you want them on, you can turn them on, and then you can configure them. So we're going to go to Setup Map, and you press enter. And so this one allows you to change these settings. I talked last time about using track up versus north up. When I'm flying in the airplane, I like it to be track up. It just makes more sense to me. But you can make it north up, track up, or desired track up. So my preference is track up, and I'm going to show you why that is my preference when we get to doing approaches. For now, just suffice it to say, I want to point out that you'll notice, let's close this and get back out of that. Here we are normally flying along. The autopilot is tracking the nav. We're on course and everything's looking ducky, right? Notice that pink line is completely vertical. Notice what happens now if I set the heading off a little bit and we change our heading. Watch what that pink line on the navigator does. You see it kind of leans over a little bit. So if you see that indication on your nav page, that means you are not on course, or if you're on course, you're not going to be on course for long. You're diverging from the course. So that's if you run the map in, let's go ahead and set it to north up mode. So we'll put it in north up, and I'll get rid of the cursor. So now it's north up. As you turn around, oops, let me set the heading here is what I want to do. Notice that the airplane moves. It's a little bit harder to see. That pink line is not necessarily vertical, and as my own technique, I use that as an indication for where I'm supposed to be and gauging my progress against my course. So you don't have that option if you're running it in north up or in desired track up. It's only true in your track up. So that's just me. Your mileage may vary. You may prefer something different. So we go back here to the setup map. You can scroll down here and you can turn your auto zoom on and off. So if your waypoint is a long way away, the navigator will automatically zoom out so that your active waypoint is always toward the top of the screen. You can turn some land data off and nav data off. I tend to like these just in sort of the default mode. And you can do that just by pressing menu again. Oh, see, we're getting up close to terrain. This is what happens if you're flying close to some sort of obstacle or terrain. You get this advisory. And if you want to just clear that and get rid of it, you push the clear button. If you push the enter button, it takes you to the obstacle or the traffic page, or the terrain page rather, to show you where it is that you're in danger.
Hey, Mike, is one of the fields that you can enter on that page cross-track error?
Yes, let me just get to that here. I'll get rid of this page. You come to menu. You can scroll down here to change fields. This is where you can make these whatever you want. And I tend to go, generally speaking, with the default ones. You got your desired track here, your actual track here, and your distance. I don't like a lot of duplication, so I like different things displayed on my Garmin than I do on my ForeFlight. But if you want to change one of these, that's going to drive me nuts. Here, I'll climb. I'll get away from the obstacles and make those warnings stop. So we're generally westbound, 4,500 feet out to do it for now. So that terrain is going to be less of a problem for us. You'll see, oops, let me get rid of that cursor, come back over here to the terrain. Things will more, the red will turn yellow and the yellow will turn black. So that means we're safer, we're farther away from the terrain. So back to those, oops. Come back to our nav page, come to the menu. We're going to change fields. So the cursor is highlighting the field you're going to change. So this top box right now is indicating waypoint. Let's say I want to change this bottom one. Right now it shows distance and I want to make that cross-track error. You just take your big knob and scroll down to that box, take your little knob and spin it, and it's going to put up this other box here. And now you can spin it to select what you want it to actually show. So cross-track error, XTK, is one that I have displayed a lot. I really like having this capability, and drives all my passengers crazy. When I'm flying along, they'll pop that up and the cross-track error always shows 0.1 or something. I'm always on track. Well, why not? I made a line, I'm going to follow that line. So now you see that it shows cross-track error. It says I'm right on the line. If we put the autopilot back in heading mode, let it get off course, you can see that change. So it tells you how far away from the course you are and which direction the track is. So that takes care of that one. And let me put it back into track up. Oops, come up here, press enter. Track up. As you can see, it's kind of tedious on here. It is a little bit easier to do this stuff in the, oops, nope, don't want to do that. It's a little easier to do it in the real airplane when you have a real button that you can push. Put it back in nav mode, let it track that course, and away we go. Okay. So let's do this. Let me switch back to the 530 simulator. And this is a little bit awkward on this simulator. If we select a different unit, you can only do that when you first start the simulator up. So right now, these options for the unit that you want to simulate are grayed out. You can't change it. What you have to do is close the simulator. So it's just kind of a nuisance, but that's the way it goes. I did get a question. Let me try this now.
I launched a poll while you're doing that too.
Yeah,
just so
why don't you do that? Little poll here for what kind of navigator are you running?
And it's running.
And meanwhile, let me get this dialed up here. Share screen, iPhone, iPad, and share this. This is some video that I shot with my phone in my airplane, and I'll go ahead and show a couple things. It takes it a couple of seconds to get this going. So yeah, it looks like mostly, oh, we got a lot of 430s. That's more 430s than I thought. Almost 2/3 of us are using 430s and about 1/3 with a 530. Yeah, 480, a few 650s, 750s, those are coming up. And for those of you flying with something other than a 430 or 530, I should have mentioned this at the outset. This is going to be predominantly the GTN stuff. Let me see, is this actually going to work here? Why is this not actually sharing it? There it goes. Okay. We're going to focus on 430 and 530. So, don't feel left out, though. A lot of these same techniques work in the other navigators, like especially the GTNs, GTXs. The 530, 480 is quite different. It's a whole different animal. And the Kings and Avidynes, again, are different animals, but still a lot of it actually works. I did get a question about how to change the data cards. So let me just show that one. And get that out of the way here. That left memory slot, this is a 530. That left memory slot is your nav data card. and you just move this little tab, you kind of tap that and just kind of slide it over to the right, and this handle pops up. Let me go ahead and play it again. Is it going to play? Here we go. Slide that over to the right, and this little handle thing pulls out. You pull the old card out, you go program it, or if you're like me, I have 2 cards, so I swap, I alternate the cards. That's how you change the card. It's pretty easy, really. Here's a little airplane porn for you. That's my 787 across the middle of the Pacific. It was kind of cute. I think that's a real sexy wing. That wing is just so amazing to me.
It looks so calm, yet it's doing so much.
Yeah, it's only lifting 400,000 pounds there. It's no big deal, all in a day's work. And then I've got some other videos I'll show a little bit later on with some other stuff if we get to it. So let me stop that share, and let's bring up this navigator now. It's going to take me a second. In this case now, okay, so we'll share this navigator. Okay, so now you should see the navigator again. If I go to options now, these are not grayed out anymore. I can select the other navigator I want. So I can select the 530. I'll click and turn it on. It's a little bit bigger than the 430, so you have to kind of scroll the window down there to make it all fit. And so it goes through the same startup process. Again, the old data, old program on it. You get a little bit more screen here for the obstacle database, and here's the software. That's the terrain version. It's running the tests. Again, old data. There is no expectation they will ever update that data. It's just always going to be old. So, but yours should be current. So check that. Now we'll go through these. Here's the same setup or a test menu. You've got the OBS is showing. And again, if we move the needle, you should see that OBS value changing. We press enter. We see the satellite status page, and now we see the nav page. So we can move back out again. And in this case, I have a bunch of stuff turned off. If you notice that your screen is kind of complex and there's a tremendous amount of information in it, you can declutter the screen. And you do that by pressing the clear button. You'll see down here in the lower left corner is this, let me get rid of that flashing message box. We're not going to use it for navigation. You see this 35 here indicates that that's 35 miles from where you are to the edge of the screen here. And that -3 says I have it decluttered to the 3rd level. There are 4 levels. So you can just cycle through them, push clear. Clear again takes you to -1. Clear again takes you to -2, then -3. And more stuff falls off of the display at the more decluttered that it is. So when it's not decluttered at all, you see airspace, you see airports. You zoom in and you'll start to see more. So you zoom into the 20-mile range, you'll see Class Delta airspace. We zoom in even more, we'll start to see intersections. Again, the one thing you will not find on this simulator or any 430 or 530s, you will not find Victor Airways. They just don't exist. There's a reason to go get a GTN or a 480 or something like that, Avidyne. All those have Victor Airways. Your iPad does, which is why that flight stream is pretty cool.
Bunch of people asked what the Ds were on the status page. Do you know what that is?
On the status page over this one, I don't see if these were.
I'm not sure because I didn't see it. Maybe it's the database page.
Maybe it was on the other one. I wonder if that's the vertical speed required. If you push this VNAV button, you get a vertical speed required.
On the bars. The D's on the bars on the status page.
Okay. Let's go pull that
Thanks,
up again.
Lou.
Oh, the D's in those bars. Okay, the D's indicate that it's receiving differential position information, WASP data from that satellite. So not all the satellites do. More and more of the satellites do as they launch newer satellites and replace the older ones. I think the last time I pulled up this page on mine, I had a D on every bar. So that meant it's receiving WASP data from all the satellites. When the WASP system was very new, you'd only get 1 or 2 satellites that had WASP data. Now they all do. So some additional redundancies in that system.
Okay, very cool. A lot of people were asking that. A lot of people saw those and were wondering.
Okay, well, there you go.
Wasn't me just checking to see how much you know.
Well, yeah, that would be a short trip. So.
I know better.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Okay, so let's spend a little bit more on these nav pages here. Again, this is your nav page 1. If you look on this lower half, this right half of this lower bar, that nav tells you which chapter you're in. We have the nav chapter, waypoint chapter, aux chapter, and nearest chapter. And then this series of boxes tells you which page you're on. So on this nav, you can see that there are 5 nav pages, and we're on nav page 1. So on the 530, this is what nav page 1 looks like. We still have this deviation bar like we had on the 430 nav page 1. We have the from and to like we did on the others. And on the 530, we got so much more real estate. We can put the speed, desired track, actual track, distance, and time on the screen around a map. So there's one reason among many that I like the 530 better, but sometimes you just don't have the real estate in your panel to put a 530 in. Nav page 2 is what we've been looking at a little while ago. And this has the same sort of configuration thing. You go to the menu here, and you come up here to set up map. You can make it track up and auto zoom off and on. If you have an external AHRS type of a thing, you can get a wind vector. You can turn all this stuff on. I tend to leave it kind of the default setting there. Again, you can go down here to the data fields. You can turn those off and on. You can change the fields the same way. Press enter and we have our same cursor. We scroll down here. So if you can work a 430, you can work a 530. The G1000 is also very similar. The GTN, again, very similar, but the menus for this are a little bit different with the touch screen. You can do a lot more with it. Okay, so I talked about the restore defaults. And okay, we talked about airspace information. That does not exist on the nav page 1. Let's scroll down in here. We can see some airspace as we zoom in. There is no cursor on this nav page 1. So you can poke that button all you want on nav page 1. You won't get that little cursor to move around. But if you go over to nav page 2 and you push cursor, now you have the same little cursor. You can move it around the same way. You can see it's highlighting this airspace. So if we press enter, do we want to review that airspace? It's, yep, okay, this is the class D for Fullerton. Here's the altitude limits of it. You can big knob down here to view frequencies if you want. Here's all the frequencies for the airport that's at the center of that airspace. And if you're done, you can come back up here and just click done. You come back here, you can get rid of your cursor, just push the cursor button away, and there you go. Okay, and this is where I was going to talk about that create user waypoint, but you already caught me on that one, so I did that one. So now we've got that named waypoint that we can put in a flight plan, and we'll come back to that in just a little bit. So let's look at these waypoint pages a little bit. Waypoint page 1 is the airport information, and generally it has your departure or destination airport. To be honest, I haven't quite figured out when it changes from the one to the other, or if it's a nearest or what have you. But this is showing us information for Van Nuys. If we want to look at something different, same deal with data entry. We just give ourselves a cursor. It's highlighted the airport. If you spin the big knob, it's going to move that cursor. But we don't want to change the boxes down here. We want to change the data up here. We want to change that Van Nuys. So you twist the little knob, and we can put a different airport in here. Let's put Camarillo in here, for instance. Camarillo CMA. And sorry for all you people back east here. We are a West Coast centric group here, so just have to live with that for now. So now we're looking at Camarillo Airport, and now we don't care about the cursor. We'll get away from it. We got the airport name, the city name, which region it's in. So if you're looking for the airport facility directory or the document formerly known as the airport facility directory, now called the chart notams, it's in the southwestern one. So that's where you look for that. Here's the lat long. Yes, it does have avgas. It does have jet fuel. It does have an approach. The best approach it has is an RNAV approach. It does have radar that comes from Mugu control. So here's all your airport, your waypoint information for an airport. You come to the next page. So now we're on waypoint page 2. This gives us runway information. So on this particular airport, we only have one runway. It's 6,000 feet long by 150 feet wide. It's a hard surface. And if you're after hours, you want to turn on the pilot controlled lighting, that gives us the frequency right there. And again, anytime you have a frequency like this, you can give yourself a cursor, scroll down to that frequency, press enter, and it's going to load it in the standby in your comm. So you don't have to, you don't want to risk breaking a nail and coming over here and spinning that knob. You can just have it do it for you with a single push. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to come over here to nav page 3. This is all the frequencies, starting with the first ones you need. Anytime you're going to do anything, you're going to start with an ATIS or an ASOS. Then you're going to call clearance delivery. Then you're going to call ground, you call tower, and you call departure. Notice that if we give ourselves a cursor and start scrolling down here, again, we can transfer those numbers in there if we want. We have the scroll bar along the right-hand side. What this is indicating is it's currently displaying the solid white part, and the open part indicates that there's some more frequencies down there. So if we keep scrolling all the way down to the bottom, now it shows us the last frequency. It's showing us that it's only showing us so many. We have so many frequencies, we can't see them all. So that's your indication that there's more to go. All right, and we come over here to waypoint page 4. This is looking at approaches. So in this case, we're looking at the RNAV runway 8. Right now, the transition is showing us as vectors. If we wanted to look at a different airport, for instance, you can look at it here. You can scroll down here and select a different approach. So that we have 4 different approaches that we can choose from here. Let's say we wanted to look at the RNAV 26 Zulu. Then this is what that looks like. Right now it's showing us the vectors, so it's only showing us the final approach. If we wanted to see what it looks like, if we come down from, say, Suwana intersection. So now it shows us Suwana, and if we zoom in a little bit, you can see, you can't really move around much on this screen, but you can see the thick line here and the thin lines over here. So the thick lines are the transition that we selected. Get rid of that cursor. The next page is arrival information. There are no stars for this airport, so you won't see anything there. There are no SIDS for this airport, so you won't see that. And then it shows us nearby intersections, NDBs, VORs, and user waypoints. So in most of these later pages in the waypoint section, I don't even use myself. But if you do have one of those extra peripherals I was talking about, if you have an ADSB receiver, an ADSB in that's receiving traffic and weather data, there will be a couple of other pages in here. And one of those pages about in the middle, right around here, one of them is going to be the METAR for the airport. And the next one's going to be the TAF for the airport. Oops, something wrong there. So you get one page with the METAR and one page with the TAF. And those are extra pages depending on your configuration. So that is all for the waypoint button. Now, when you're looking at these approaches, let's say here, there isn't a way that while you're looking at this approach, you can't just add this approach. Actually here, if you're looking at the airport and the approach, you find the one you want, you can press the menu button, and the top item in here is to load this into the active flight plan, or you can load and activate. And here's the caution again, make sure you remember, if you activate this approach, it's going to take you from your current position directly to the transition fix that you selected. So here is where, if you've ever noticed on an approach page, up in the box where it shows you the frequencies and so forth, there's a channel number there. And everybody always says, well, what's that channel number for? That channel number can be entered right here. You take that number off the approach chart, dial it right in here, and it'll pull it up. I don't know why you'd ever want to do that. It's a whole lot easier to select the approach using the approach, the procedure button, or this approach page here. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so departure procedures, just for kicks. Let's come out of my airport. I'm based out of Fullerton, so I'm going to dial. Actually, Brian, I know you've been following a lot of issue over at Van Nuys. We have a SID there at Van Nuys that is among the most often violated SIDs in the country right now. And let's take a little look at how it's depicted on the 530 and how people get into trouble doing this approach. Oops. What was the name of that?
Santa Ana has one as well.
Yeah, it does.
Similar issue, at least.
Yeah, so let's look at how that's displayed. Do you remember which departure it is offhand?
I'll know it when I see it.
As you can see, as tedious as it is in the airplane to enter this stuff, it's even more tedious in the simulator. Oh, I'm on the approach page. I want to be on the departure page. Waypoint, departure. Okay, we're at Van Nuys. We're on the Canoga 8. That's the one, isn't it?
That's the one.
Okay. I didn't have this prepared. Let me see if I can get this real quick here. If you're following along at home, you can pull up in your ForeFlight Van Nuys Airport and look at the SIDS. And
The Canoga 3 now.
how come I'm not seeing it? Oh, here we are down at the bottom. Canoga 3, I'll look at page 1. So let me share this page as well. It should do both. Now I'm all, oh, maybe advanced. No, I can only show one of them at a time. So let me I'll show this one just for a minute. Let me close that poll. Here's the departure we're talking about.
Your
the
menus,
problem is,
there it is.
And we're going to see how this is depicted on the simulator in just a bit. I'm showing that whole screen, aren't I? I don't want to do that. I want to just share this portion of it. So here's the SID. Off each runway, you can see, here's where we're getting into trouble. This is a heading. You're going to just fly a heading off of the runway, and you're going to wait for instructions, okay? You're not going to navigate on anything. You're not going to track a route to a fix or anything. You're going to fly this 213 heading until ATC says cleared direct to a PHO. All right, you with me? So now let's go back to our simulator and see how this is depicted. Okay, we press the menu. We're going to load this into the active flight plan. So now we see our flight plan. We've got runway 16 left, and it's got this leg just direct to IPHO intersection. So you look on the map page. Let's look at our nav page 1, and if we zoom in a little bit here, it's just showing that we're supposed to. Actually, let me reset the position of the airport here too, so it looks correct. More tedious typing. This is the boring part of this. There's just no good way to do it.
It lets people catch up. I think it's okay.
Yeah. So if you're playing along at home, this is the musical interlude. We're going to put Van Nuys in here. We're going to get on the ground at Van Nuys. Van Nuys, okay. And let's activate this approach again. Let me see how the best way to do this is going to be. We go to the Waypoint page, Canoga 8, menu, load into active flight plan. So now it's from where we are direct to the airport, and we come back to the nav page. Now you can see it's showing a direct line from where we are to the fix. It doesn't show us on that heading. This is what's getting pilots into trouble. They take off and they just start following that pink line, or maybe even worse, they just go direct to IPHO and they violate this SID. So what you should do instead is just remember that you're going to fly this in a heading. You're going to fly this on a 213 heading.
And even if you don't fly in or out of Van Nuys, there are SIDs like this all over the country that are messing pilots up. So
exactly. Yeah, you mentioned one out of Orange County. It's the same process. It's a heading, not a track that you're flying off of the runway. So what you should be seeing on this map once you break ground, here, let's go a little bit faster, 200 knots, that's enough. You should be seeing something like this on the map. You're flying away from that line. That's okay. That's what you're supposed to do. Now, this is different than there are departures that are an RNAV procedure, and on those ones, you are allowed to track the track that's part of the clearance. It's an RNAV SID. It's not a vector SID. So keep that in mind and just be aware of what you're doing and make sure that what you're telling the box to do and what you're making the airplane do is what the procedure says you're supposed to do. So Gary Schenk just did an IFR refresher class down at Orange County the other night. He spent a lot of time on SIDS and stars. So that's a lot better reference on it. I just wanted to show you that this is an issue. And remember, G1000s and Avidynes and all the other navigators depict them differently. So this
a great plug for Pilot Edge. Andrew just posted in the chat that he got in trouble on Pilot Edge for violating this same kind of departure out of Burbank, and Burbank does have one. And he's grateful to have made it behind the screen, and not in the airplane. Another plug for that, and a great idea for practicing that way and get in trouble that way rather than violated by the FAA.
Yes, and for those of you who don't know, Pilot Edge is a service for air traffic controllers to control you when you're flying your home simulator. So you can be flying Microsoft Flight Simulator or X-Plane or something like that at home, and you're talking over the internet with an air traffic controller who's going to be watching you on a display very similar to what an actual air traffic controller uses. So it's a good opportunity, especially if you're an instrument student, to kind of work on and hone your ATC skills, and they'll catch little mistakes like this. It's great to catch them on the ground in a simulator in the comfort of your office instead of in the airplane, where the next thing they say is, I got a phone number for you to copy for a possible pilot deviation. You really don't want to get that one. Okay, so that is more than what I wanted to do on that at this moment. I was starting out looking at the aux pages, believe it or not. So you notice you asked me earlier about how did I get that 30-hour oil change message, and I said it was in the scheduler. Now this is the same place. This is our aux chapter, and in this installation you have 4 pages. The scheduler shows up on page 1, and then you can scroll through the pages here. You see checklist, timer, stats, all sorts of other information in here. So that scheduler, again, just give yourself a cursor, scroll down here to scheduler, press enter, you come up here. Here's that check change thing that I started to work. See, it started again here. We've only got 29 minutes to go. On the 530, you can put 3 different timers in here. So come back out here. One of the things I wanted to show here was this density, altitude, true airspeed winds. This is basically an E6B. And for the altitude here, it will fill in some of these numbers in this top box for you. It'll put in a GPS altitude, so it might not exactly match your pressure altitude, but you can dial that in. Your calibrated airspeed, you can set that if you don't have an AHRS or that sort of a system, an air data computer, you can manually type in your airspeed. So let's say we're at 10,000 feet. Press enter. Actually, let's make that 10,000 feet. Actually, I'll make it 11 because it's easier. 11,000 feet. Let's say I'm indicating, I'd like to indicate it 250 knots in my 182, but I only do 150. You can set your local barometric pressure setting in here. You can set your true altitude, or I'm sorry, true air temperature, your outside air temperature over here. And you can program your compass heading in here. And what you'll get down here is your density altitude based on this altitude and that temperature, your true airspeed based on that altitude and temperature, and your calibrated airspeed and baro pressure that you entered. And then the lower line here will take your wind, your magnetic heading that you said you were doing. It knows what you're tracking across the ground, so it calculates the difference. And it says you got look at that, a big wind, 175 knots. That's because we're stopped. If I move that up to say here, it's constantly doing this recalculation. So if you're going to give say a pilot report to flight service, and please do give pilot reports to flight service, even if the weather's nice. Other pilots want to know that. You can come over here and read your wind. So you got this is a magnetic wind. So be sure to tell them the wind is 213 magnetic at 60 knots or whatever. And it calculates how much of that is headwind. So that's your built-in E6B that you paid $15,000 for. Trip planning, fuel planning. You remember when we started this up, one of the menu options there at the beginning was to set full fuel. And you can program in what full fuel is. Why is it telling me that? I got an extra window popped up here or something is not happy. From our present position to the last waypoint in the flight plan, when I get there, I'm going to have 0 fuel on board if I'm burning at 12 gallons an hour and at this speed. Now, I didn't tell it how much fuel I had, so that's why it's kind of confusing. But if I come over here and I say, all right, I'm going to start this out with, I'll say 100 gallons because it's easy. Say we got a big Bonanza with big tanks or something. So we're burning 12 gallons an hour. And if you have a fuel flow transducer installed in your airplane that communicates with your 530, it'll take that number automatically for you in here. It knows your ground speed. And based on that data, it says, okay, to get to that waypoint along the route that we have programmed, it's going to take 13.7 gallons. We're going to land with 86 gallons of fuel. We're going to have 7 hours and 11 minutes of fuel remaining. So endurance is 8 hours and 19 minutes. This is the reserve time. We're going to have 7:11 of reserve fuel after we get there. We're getting 8.3 miles to the gallon, and we can fly 830 miles. So that's your fuel planning page. Really is handy if you're rich and you can put in a fuel flow transducer like an FP5L or something. That's what I have in my airplane. All right, so get rid of that. Come down here to trip planning. This is another one I use a little bit. Along this trip, it'll tell you, if I told it my departure time is this on this date, and that's the speed I'm doing. Here's your track distance and time en route at this speed. It tells me sunrise and sunset. It says I'm going to get there in 3 hours and 29 minutes at this speed. So somehow that doesn't, oh, Avenal, that's a long way away. It still doesn't seem quite right. But in your airplane, it'll show actual numbers for your actual condition, and it'll be right. So again, it's not the true fuel in your tank. You could run out before that. You got to look at your own tanks and be aware those fuel transducers will lie to you in certain circumstances, and it's good to know that. So here's where I can set up a checklist. I mentioned earlier that I do set up checklists. In my airplane, I've got a couple of them in here. Oops, and go to enter. So I get myself a cursor. It doesn't even do it in the simulator. So in the airplane, it's tedious to put this in. It's an iterative process of just give yourself a cursor, push and twist and spin and get the things in there. It's a real pain. But once you do it, it's kind of handy. And that's what I use in my airplane for my checklist. Flight timers. You have a generic timer here. You can set these for whatever you want. So what starts this timer? And if you spin this knob, why is it not? So you can start and stop this timer. You push start, it's going, you see it counting up. If you make it a countdown timer, then you can set the time. So if you want to get woken up every 30 minutes, let's say, you can come over here and make it say 30 minutes. You press enter. It's a countdown timer, it's timing, and you can see it counting down. So at 30 minutes, it's going to pop up a message. Stop. No, I'm going to keep that going. So you can set one up that turns on automatically when you power on the airplane. So this might be what you log in your logbook for your out time or your start time. So you can either do it from power on when the unit wakes up, or you can do it for when the ground speed is greater than 30 knots. So I do that for a flight timer. So your off time and your on time. And you can reset that if you want. You have a total trip timer down here, and this one triggers by power on, or again, you can do it by ground speed greater than 30. So you can have one that counts your flight time and one that counts your total block time. So it's kind of a gee whiz fun thing. I don't often use it, but it's cool. You get your trip statistics. You got your odometer and your average ground speed, your maximum ground speed. So this simulator is really fast. It's very cool. And I've only flown 13,000 miles in this simulator. You can do a trip odometer. I always forget to reset this at the beginning of a trip. I try to remember to reset it before I launch for Oshkosh, let's say. And I'm not very good about that. I need to get better. So RAIM prediction. One of the questions I got was, how do you do a RAIM prediction? If you have a W model, a 530W or a 430W, you don't really need to do this. That's one of the advantages of the WASP unit, is it does the RAIM computation for you. But if for some reason you wanted to do one, you can come to this page. You set the waypoint where you want to do this. So you can put the airport in here. Let's put something just for kicks back east. Let's go to Boston. Maybe the weather's not too bad there tonight. And Boston, we can load that in there. We can look at the time. Let's say we're going to arrive there tomorrow. And this is the time. We come over here to compute RAIM, and it goes and it does a computation. I don't know how it does that computation. I don't know how it knows, but it does know the geometry of the satellites, and it can make a prediction in time. And eventually, you'll get a little message in there that says RAIM OK. And if you have a WASP unit, you don't need to do that, because the navigator is constantly doing that. And if it thinks it can't make a RAIM, if you're not going to have a valid RAIM for a portion of your flight, it'll tell you. So that's the RAIM check. Here's a place you can set your software or check your software versions. Again, this is version 3. I believe the current version of software is 5.4, something like that. It's kind of a gee whiz thing here. You really don't need to know that very much. You see it on the startup. If you forgot which database version you had, you can look in here, Worldwide Aviation Database here. Terrain database. I run with an old terrain database. I've never gotten around to updating it. Somebody did, I did get a couple of questions from people on, does that one have to be up to date? No, it doesn't have to be up to date. Here's a caution though. While the mountains don't move very often, obstacles do. And there's an obstacle database as well. And quite honestly, the obstacle database does not keep up with some of the obstacles out there. You can go online and find the stories that, excuse me, about people flying across the country, across Iowa, and they look up and they're passing a wind turbine. These things are growing faster than they can keep up with them, so the charts are not up to date. You can set alarms in here. You can set your nearest airport criteria. This is a good one to take a look at. For instance, you can tell it you want it to be able to point out any airport, or you can look at hard surface only, hard or soft, or water if you fly a float plane, for instance, and a minimum runway length. So, for instance, it won't show you runways that are shorter than, say, 3,000 feet if you're flying a heavy twin that you don't want to get onto a short runway. Okay, so we got data field configuration, I believe. Yeah, they're really, oh, this is the little box over on the left side here where you see on the 530, we have enough extra real estate. When you have a station tuned in, it'll show you the distance and the radial from that fix. You can change that to be something else. If you have an ADS-B receiver that's giving you traffic, you can have that little box replaced with a traffic display if you want instead. So this is where you do that. COM configuration. If you're flying in Europe or some parts of Canada, you can go to the 8.33 kilohertz spacing if you want. That's where you do that. And let's go. This last page is for SBAS selection. I could show you this, but then I'm going to have to kill you. Top secret CFI trick. Make it so you can't do a WAS approach right there. So I didn't show you that. If somebody says I did, I will deny it. That is your aux book. And then the last book we have is the nearest, and we touched on this a little bit. Remember my Garmin 101 trick for always getting to the nearest airport from wherever you are. You know, let's say we're over here on the Waypoint page. You want to get to the nearest airport page. Just take this big knob, spin it all the way to the right. Take the little knob, spin it all the way to the left. That takes you to the nearest page 1, which is your nearest airport. And we got our flashing message again. It's telling me to set the course. I don't care about you. All right, so that is the aux. It's all those pages. Now I wanted to show you, where the heck are we? We're a long way away from anything, aren't we? Okay. I had some questions about the OBS button. This is a really confusing thing here. I'm going to slow down here a little bit and let's make it go back toward land here somewhere. So the way the OBS button works, there's 4 different functions you can do with it. You can use it to, I'm going to just touch on them briefly. I use it to set up an extended centerline for the airport. I can use it for an arbitrary holding pattern at any waypoint. I use it to suspend waypoint sequencing. For instance, if you're in a holding pattern and you don't want it to sequence to the next waypoint, and you use it to activate the missed approach. So I wanted to spend a little time on approaches, and we've already been at it for an hour and a half, so we're going kind of long here tonight. This is important, and this is kind of the meat of where I wanted to go tonight. So I'm going to set our position to be out by let's put it by Snake. It's right by my house. And we'll look at the ILS approach into Orange County Airport, Santa Ana, John Wayne. The airport's so nice, they named it thrice. Snake intersection happens to be about a mile from my house, and it's on the final approach into Orange County. So except that's our current position now, and if we zoom in, you'll see Snake intersection right there. Now we come to procedure. We're going to select the approach. I got to change the airport to be SNA. And I'm picking this airport, this approach, because it's a terrestrial approach. It's a non-GPS approach. I had some questions about how do we deal with these terrestrial approaches with the RNAV. And now again, remember I said the database is old. They've changed the runway number at Orange County. Now it's runway 20, right? So this database is so old that we have the old plate. And for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to set it up with the Seal Beach transition. So we'll come down here, we'll load Seal Beach, and we want to load. Remember, loading just puts it in the flight plan. Activating will navigate you from your current position direct to the chosen final initial approach fix. Right now, I just want to activate it. It's for guidance only. You're going to get this message if you're attempting to do an approach that you cannot use the GPS to navigate. So it's an ILS approach. You have to use an ILS to do it. You can't use the GPS. It's giving us a warning. So yeah, I know. We're going to let it do it anyway. So we still have our old flight plan in here. And remember to, here's a little flight plan editing technique here. Give yourself a cursor with this cursor button. You have the cursor highlighting on a fix. You can just push clear and you want to remove that waypoint. Enter. Yep, we do. Push clear. We want to remove that one. Push clear. We want to remove that one. You could also go to the menu here, and one of the items down here is delete flight plan. But if I do that, I'm going to delete that approach that I just loaded. So I don't want to do that. So this is a context sensitive menu that will be different things in this menu based on where you are. So I want to delete this Avenal waypoint. Now we have just the approach. So we're going to start this approach at Seal Beach, and then we're going to go to this waypoint NA, and then we're going to go to Snake, and then we're going to do a hold in lieu of procedure turn, and then we're going to go to Lemon, and then we're going to go to runway 19 right and minnow. So this is why you can't use an out-of-date database, is none of those fixes are current anymore. So if we look at our map here, here's our Snake intersection. Here's the holding pattern. North is over there, kind of a little off kilter. We zoom out a little bit, we can see the approach. So right now, this active waypoint is Snake intersection as the IAF. Showing a little bit weird here. So I'm going to start this simulator in motion. I'm going to fly out here to the west a little bit, and we'll talk about some more things as this is happening. So we don't want to start this approach yet. This is actually, it was actually moving already a little bit here. It has navigated this hold a little bit. Let's give ourselves a cursor and let's scroll up. Notice that we still have this whole approach is loaded in there. It happens to be, think it's active on this leg right now. Think to yourself for a moment, what happens if I activate this approach right now? And you should know the answer to this before you hit that button. So if you press menu, if you press procedure and activate approach, what happens? And remember, we have this approach selected here. We have the SNA ILS 19 right, and we loaded the Seal Beach transition. So the navigator is going to take us present position, direct to Seal Beach, and then do the approach. So think before you activate, is that what you want to do? So in this case, yes, let's do that. So we want to discontinue the current approach, yes. So now we're going to navigate present position, direct to Seal Beach. We'll put it in nav mode and we'll let it go. So it's going to navigate to Seal Beach, and then it's going to go to NA, this Maggie fix over here. It's not even there anymore. And then it's going to take us out to Snake. It's going to do the procedure turn. And if I had the procedure, if you pull this old procedure up, if you could, you'd see that that's what this approach transition was. And we don't want to do that. That's ridiculous. Why would we ever fly this approach in this way? So clearly that wasn't what we wanted to do. Let's select it differently. So we can select the approach. Again, the ILS 19 right. Let's say we want to do the Snake transition as the initial approach fix. So now we're going to start from Snake, do the procedure turn, and then come inbound. So how about that? So we can no longer load it because we're already on an active approach, so we don't get the option to load it. That would just put it at the end of the flight plan, and you can only have one approach at a time. So it has to stop, cancel the approach it's doing now before it can start the next one. So that's where we are. We're going to activate that. So now we're going to go direct to Snake. We're going to do that hold. We're going to do the come inbound on this procedure turn into Lemon. And we're in nav mode, so it's doing it. You can see us turning. Close the flight plan. Let's zoom out and we can see this. We'll especially see it as we come around to the north. So you see our leg to Snake. You see our procedure turn. It's going to go inbound. I can't tell you how many times, the number of times that I've ever been able to do this approach as published with that hold in lieu of procedure turn is exactly 0. SoCal approach does not want you doing that. They're going to vector you onto this approach. So let's talk about that. So we've activated this approach, But we don't want to do that. We want to do something different. We want to activate this leg from the hold into lemon, right? So to do this, we give ourselves a cursor. We scroll down here to lemon. We highlight that. Now we go, there's two ways to do this. I'm going to show you what I've come to find is the easier way to do it. Once that fix is highlighted, you press menu. We have activate leg. That's what we want to do. So we want to activate that leg from snake to lemon. That's the leg from into the final approach fix. Is that what we want to do? So again, before you execute, before you press enter on this activate, you want to make sure that's what you want to do. So yep, snake to lemon, that's what we want to do. If you've got a right seater, a safety pilot, or an instructor, say, hey, does that look good to you? Yep. Now you can see the holding pattern is not going to happen. We're going to navigate that leg from snake to lemon, and away we go. So if we had a heading to get over there instead, let's say they said fly heading 090, you can leave the GPS in this navigate mode, put your heading bug where you want to go, put your autopilot in heading mode until you get somewhere close. So they're vectoring us to intercept this. Let's actually give it a little bit more over here. If we had our cross-track error displayed somewhere, yeah, we're 0.8 of a mile off course. So somewhere in about this point, they're going to say flight heading 150, intercept the localizer, and maintain 3,000 feet till established, cleared for the approach. So here's what we do. We're in heading, we get established on that heading. It's actually almost captured already. Once that needle comes alive, put your autopilot in nav mode. Now we're still tracking the GPS here, but it's an ILS approach. So you have to put it in VLOC mode or use your second receiver. You can use your nav2 to track this. The autopilot's still in nav mode. It's still going to track this. But we're using the map for situational awareness, but our indicator is showing the actual GPS, or I'm sorry, localizer signal. Now in this case, we don't have a GPS or a glide slope for some reason. Because we didn't put the frequency in. So now we put the frequency in, and we should be more like about 2,000 feet or so. I don't think we're going to actually get a glide slope on a GPS approach. So the rule is that you can use the GPS to navigate everything leading up to the final approach fix, and you can use it for everything after the missed approach point. But you have to use the terrestrial navigation for the final approach course and final approach segment. So that means right about now, here we are. I don't have the distance on there. The distance is, we're just less than a mile outside of Lemon intersection as a final approach fix. At this point, we'd have to be in VLOC mode. So that's what you got to do. Just get used to it. Switch that over to VLOC and you're good to go. In your airplane, if you have another receiver, you can use that. So let's get it moving again. Now you'll see Lemon is still our active fix for about another 0.6 of a mile. As we cross it, it goes into the approach mode now. Navigating an LNAV type approach. We would put this on VLOC mode and let it track that, but we still have everything on the map. So this is where it's really handy for your situational awareness. You can see your waypoints on the way in, and you'll know when you've crossed certain points. You get this big picture is building for you, and you're good to go. So let's pretend I'm in my 787 doing 200 knots down final. We're going to navigate down here. When you get to the missed approach point on an ILS approach or on a VOR approach or a localizer, something like that, that's when we come out of the VLOC mode and put it back in GPS mode to navigate the missed approach. I forgot, I started out talking about OBS, didn't I? This is one of the uses for the OBS button. You'll see what happens here. And by the way, this is one of the things I like about the 530 over the 430. Is I'm going to slow it down when we get to the final approach fix here into the missed approach segment. And you're going to see then what it indicates to you for navigation information is a little bit more useful on the 530. You see this little green caret here at the top? That's pointing to the active waypoint. No matter where that active waypoint is, it's going to point to it. You'll see here in a moment as we go by the missed approach point, the navigator is going to go into suspend mode. You're going to see it say SUSP over here. It's going to stop sequencing waypoints. And this little caret is going to point the shortest direction of turn to that missed approach point. So if you start, say, a circling approach, and you're circling for the runway and you lose sight of it, now you have to go missed. That little green arrow is going to point to your shortest turn back to the missed approach point, back to where you start your missed approach from. So here it says we're arriving at waypoint. I'm going to slow things down a bit here. Okay, so we got 0.2 of a mile. We got 6 seconds. We're still navigating to the missed approach point. When this happens now and you're on an actual approach, if you want to go missed, see, we got into suspend mode. Now this pointer is saying the shortest turn is a right turn to get back to that missed approach point to navigate your circling approach and your missed. Okay, so next thing you can do is go into GPS mode and click suspend. Now you've triggered it to start navigating the missed approach. So now it's going to navigate out here. You saw minnow became the active waypoint. Now it's navigating the missed approach. We drifted slightly off course here. The autopilot in nav mode is going to get back on that course and track it out to minnow intersection, and away we go. And you can see that on the flight plan page here. You see it's navigating from the runway to the missed approach point, and voila. So the only difference between this on an ILS approach and on an RNAV approach is you would stay in GPS mode the entire time. So it's a little bit easier.
Mike, quick question.
Sure.
A lot of great info here and a lot of good comments from the people as well.
I can't wait to read them.
So, and you're going to have to, because there's a lot of questions we're just not going to have time to get to, but several people asking about the vectors to final and why not to use that. So I know you've covered it before, but I think it's worth covering again.
Yep. Let me go put us in heading mode and I'll start tracking over here. So meanwhile, we can watch what happens here on this flight plan here. You see that as we look through this approach on the flight plan, all those waypoints are still there. We have our old departure that we did. We've got snake, we've got hold, we've got lemon, and all this. So the question is, what happens when you do vectors to final? And here's what happens. We're in the flight plan, we go menu. I'm sorry, I did that again. We don't want menu, we want procedure, and you get this menu. And the top item in that menu is activate vectors to final. So think for a moment here, before I activate vectors to final, what's it going to do? And here's what it's going to do. It takes out all the legs on the approach except for the final approach fix and the missed approach point going out to the missed approach hold. So we lost snake, we lost that procedure turn, we lost everything before it. So you don't know how far out you are as you're looking on this page. So let me go ahead and pick up the pace here a little bit. The one I really like to demonstrate this technique is on the Fullerton approach, the RNAV runway 24 approach. If you want to take a look at that on your favorite EFB, you'll notice there's a step down on outside the final approach fix. You have LAME, you have HAVR, and you have ACTAC. And there's a step down. You have to maintain 2,700 feet between LAME and HAVR, and then you have to maintain 2,000 feet between HAVR and ACTAC. So if you're outside there somewhere and you activate vectors to final, that waypoint called HAVR disappears from the route. You don't know where it is anymore. It doesn't show up on the map. So you can't tell just by looking at it, am I before that fix or am I after that fix? You have to do some mental math. And keep in mind, there's that step down. So, they say maintain 3,000 until established. You're established, but is your minimum altitude now 2,700 or is it 2,000? You can't tell by looking at the navigator. So if instead we come over here to procedures, we have to reselect the approach all the way down in this case, and we'll take the Pomona transition in this case. So you see we've got Pomona, we got Sager, we got Snake, we got Lemon. So let's go ahead and activate this. Now you see again on the flight plan page, we have Pomona, Sager, Snake, Lemon. We push the flight plan button. We can see all these fixes. It still thinks, oh, okay, I better slow this down. You see this turn anticipation thing. We're going so fast heading to Pomona. It says you got to make this turn. So let's say, just something really wacky here that ATC says, I'll wait till we get just a little farther. Whoop, that turn ahead. Yeah, we know. We'll get rid of that. They say somewhere in here, fly heading 080. Let me put the altitude up higher so it stops complaining so much. I'll say 4,000. They say fly heading 090, intercept the leg, intercept the approach. Actually, here we'll do 130. Intercept the final, cleared for the approach. So now, once we roll out on this turn, you'll see we're going through 060 now. Here, let me declutter this map just a little bit, so we have less stuff. All we have is the approach. So you can see on this 130 heading, we're going to be on this leg between Sager and Snake. Remember, think for a moment, what happens if I activate vectors to final? And the answer is, you can tell just by looking at this, it's going to get rid of Pomona, Sager, and Snake, and all it's going to show me is lemon. So am I inside a snake or am I outside a snake? You can't tell. Okay, so my suggestion, my recommendation to all the clients I fly with instead is you pull up this flight plan button, give yourself a cursor, scroll the big knob down there to Sager, or rather to Snake, and press menu, activate leg. So watch what happens. Remember, think, what's going to happen? I got that highlighted fix. When I activate leg, Snake is going to become active, and it's not going to give me present position direct to Snake. It's going to give me that leg from Sager to Snake, and that's what I want. Okay, it asks you again just to make sure you really want to fly that leg from Sager to Snake. Enter, and look at that. That's the one you want to know, you want to do. Now we can just fly this heading until we get close to the leg. We can activate the nav mode down here, activate GPS over here so that our needle's indicating correctly. And now we know where Snake is. We'll know when we've passed it. I don't have the approach plate handy in front of me. There may be a step down at Snake. I just don't recall. But now you'll know and you'll see where that is. So the only rule about this is you have to be within 45 degrees of the heading of this final segment. And you have to be, it won't activate the approach until you're within 2 miles of the final approach fix. So watch this as we proceed down here. I can go a little bit faster.
There is a step down, Mike, just so you know. Okay,
good. So this is a perfect example of why you need to know where Snake is. So we're at 3,000, what is it, 2,400 to lemon then, or 2,200?
2,200.
Yeah, I've done this approach a million times, but they've changed it about 7 or 8 years ago. Okay, so we're in the terminal mode, which if you remember from the last one, that means you're within 30 miles of your destination, but you're not in approach mode yet. So as we intercept this, we'll go to nav mode, and let's watch what happens. It's going to pick up an intercept heading to intercept this leg. Notice our little green caret is pointing right over the active waypoint. So it's pointing to the active waypoint. If you needed to go direct to it, you could just fly that heading. And we have auto zoom turned on. So you notice as Snake got toward the middle of the screen, it auto zoomed in. So it kept it outside there. Okay, so we're still in terminal mode. Yeah, we're still a little bit off course. If we go over to a cross-track error, you can see we're 1.6 miles away from that course. Now, things will start to happen a little bit quicker here. So already you can see the value, though, of activating the leg, the pertinent leg on the approach versus activating vectors to final, that we know where this fix is. So we know where we are with respect to the step down on the approach. So now we're less than a mile away. We got our course deviation indicator comes alive. The autopilot is starting to turn to intercept that. We've got 2.25 miles to go to the fix. So at 120 knots, that'll be a minute and change. Let me go ahead and pick it up a little faster here. So watch what happens. Remember now, we did not at any point activate approach, right? So we're still flying along here. We have not activated the approach, but we activated that leg into the fix before the final approach. We're still in terminal mode, so we're in an en route mode of navigation. Once we pass Snake, once the final approach fix becomes the active waypoint, and we're within 45 degrees and we're 2 minutes from it, it'll automatically go into approach mode, and you're going to see that here. So this is what you want to watch as you progress down the approach. So here we go. So we cycle it. We're in the approach mode now. We got a black letters on a green screen. Approach mode is activated, and we never pushed activate approach. So now we know we're inside a lemon. We're on this leg from Snake to Lemon. We're established on a portion of the approach. Now we can descend down to 2,200 feet and cross Lemon. So same thing is true on our nav approaches. This happens to be an ILS that we're playing with here, but the same thing applies. So now we got a message. This is going to tell us, because we have selected a terrestrial approach that we can't use the GPS for, it's going to say, oh, you need to set your VLOC to set VLOC down here on your CDI button to do the approach. Now, in this case, in my airplane, I have my second comm radio is selected to the ILS, so I don't have to do that. Okay, let's close the flight plan and watch what happens over Snake. We're in approach mode and it's going. So that's the difference between a vectors to final versus activating a leg on the approach. So we saw the one use for the OBS button for beginning the missed approach, the 430 and the 530, and a few other navigators. I believe the GTNs also will suspend at the missed approach point. The Avidyne will automatically navigate the missed approach for you. So that's one of the differences there. So let's say, let's forget this approach thing for a little bit here. Let's push this OBS button. We're navigating off the runway here. The question comes up, you want to do an arbitrary, actually, let me take the VFR use first here. Let me pause this airplane. Here's a trick. If you're flying, I just happen to have Orange County Airport selected here, but let's put this on a heading here so it stops turning. You're flying to an airport that doesn't have an approach. Let's say you're flying to something like Oceano. There's no approaches to it. And you want to set up to do a straight in final. You've listened to the CTAF. There's no traffic in the airport. And nobody has any problem with you doing a straight in approach. If that's okay with you, then we're going to do that. What you can do is you make the airport, you go direct to the airport. In this, I'm going to leave this on the runway for this example. It happens to work. Press that OBS button and set this course pointer, or your OBS if you have a regular standard style OBS, and set your indicator to the runway number. So this is runway 19. If you set it on 19, look at this. Now that pink line is your extended center line for final. So if we start moving here, and it says we're 5 miles out. So if you're tucking on the CTAF, you can say, hey, Orange County traffic, Cessna so-and-so is on a 5 mile straight in final, runway 19. You can just follow this navigation line down here and that'll take you straight into the runway. So it's particularly nice if you're approaching an airport at sunrise or sunset and the runway is straight in front of you. You have to land right into the sun. It's a real pain. You can set this up and give yourself a little assistance for some navigation on the way. So that's another use for it. You can do a holding pattern off of anywhere. Let's say we wanted to do a holding pattern off of this fix. We can, the ATC said to hold on the 270 radial, hold east on the 270 radial. Let me zoom back out. So you make the waypoint that they want you to hold at, the active waypoint, press the OBS button, and dial in this course on the inbound leg. And now you get a depiction on the map of where that home leg, where that inbound leg of your holding pattern is. Meanwhile, to navigate there, you can just keep your little green caret right at the top of the map. We can use the heading mode and kind of adjust that a little bit. So when we get to that waypoint, let's say air traffic control said, hold east of this fix on the 090 degree radial. So 090 radial, back here on the tail end of the needle, right turns. What kind of entry are you going to do that holding pattern?
The wrong one.
Of course, yeah, I always do the wrong one. That's right. So your holding pattern with right turns is going to be where we are. So we're basically already inside the holding airspace for this waypoint. You're going to have to manually navigate this hold. So if you've got an autopilot, you can use the heading bug. It's a dead reckoning maneuver. If you don't have an autopilot, then you've got to hand fly it yourself. Timer is expired, set VLOC, do not use. Okay, we know about all those. So it tells us we're arriving at the waypoint. So we're only a mile away from it. We're doing 120 knots, that's fine. So when you get to the waypoint, you can just take your heading bug and slew it over here and start your right turn for your direct entry. If you were holding on this other side, you could you just heading bug around for your parallel entry or teardrop or whatever you're going to do. And the only navigation you'll have is this inbound final leg. But what you do also have is this estimated time en route to that waypoint. So if you just fly outbound until this says you're going to be a minute away from the hold, and then start your inbound turn, you're going to be real close to a minute on your inbound. So that's how you can do holds using the OBS button. So we've talked about holds, extended runway centerline, activating the missed approach. The only other one is suspending waypoint sequencing, for instance, if you're in a hold. So just remember that you get in the hold, press that OBS button. It's going to say suspend, SUSP, above the button instead of OBS. So that is all that I had notes for that I was going to cover tonight, and it took a little bit longer than I wanted. As you can tell, there's a lot of stuff. It takes some time to go through all this stuff. We'll probably end up doing a 301 next month or another month or so. Brian and I will have to get together and talk about schedules.
I think based on the questions that are appearing in here, that there's definitely enough interest in a 301.
I'm sure there is. So let me go ahead and stop the share there for now. And you want to hit me with some more Q&A, or you want to throw another?
Yeah, I can throw a couple at you. There was a lot of interest in whether or not you could build approaches and SIDS and stars yourself with, right.
No, you can't ever build an approach. A SID or a star you could get away with, but why? It's in the database, assuming you have a current database, and you should have. It's so much easier just to load the approach out of the database than it is to build it. And you're less likely to make a mistake with it. You're less likely to get a violation if you just load the approach. So it takes some practice. And we may have time on a future episode to get into that a little bit more. As I mentioned earlier, if you wanted to get some one-on-one on a more private basis, that's going to be on Community Aviation. I'll put the waypoint up here in a minute when we get away from some Q&A. I think you had a wrap-up poll you wanted to do. You want to throw that up here?
Let's see. Wrapping up, yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll launch this right now before everybody bails on us. If they wouldn't mind answering this poll with it for us.
Yeah, this is a good one. I can imagine there's going to be some interest in diving in more on some of these approach procedures and SIDS and stars and flight plans. This is all really good stuff, but I want to know what you want me to focus on, and we'll spend more time on that next time as well. Autopilot GPSS techniques, that one's getting a lot of hits there. That's a tricky one to do in this ground-based simulator thing. I can only deal with the simulator that they provide us, the autopilot they provide us. In your airplane, you really need to get with at least another pilot who's familiar with your setup. If you have, say, an S-Tech autopilot with GPSS steering or what have you, you need somebody who's familiar with how that works. And that's really an individualized thing as airplanes change more and more. EFB integration. Also, boy, I would love nothing more than to be able to teach you how to do that. I do have a video that I recorded on my phone about how to do that. But outside the airplane, it's really hard to do that. I'm trying to think of a way to do it because I know there's a ton of interest. It's a really cool feature.
There were a lot of questions on that as well.
Yeah. There's just really no good way to do it here yet. If you have a Redbird simulator, though, TD2 or something of that nature, even a CMX or one of the fixed-base simulators, some of them have a feature installed that you can link it up with your iPad running ForeFlight, or I suppose even a Android type device, and the simulator will then work with your tablet. If you wanted to get with Larry Jarkey on that Community Aviation as the expert on that, that's one of his areas of expertise. I can do it a little bit. I've done it with our simulator. The Fullerton Airport Pilot Association has a simulator that we're almost bringing it online. This is a feature we're going to add. Much easier to practice it on the ground in a simulator than in your airplane when you're flying along, burning 100 low lead, and you have to keep eyeballs outside looking for airplanes. So, okay, that's some pretty good answers there. Looks like we got almost 900 answers on that. That'll give us a lot of fodder going forward for our next couple presentations. So thank you very much for that. The next one we wanted to pop up is, I mentioned early on a thank you to the Ventura County 99s who kind of got Brian and me started with this thing. Oh yeah, we forgot to run this one. If you don't mind clicking there real quick.
If anybody wants to do it, they can do it. Yeah.
Tell us what kind of license you've got and how much experience you've got with the GNS. So the Ventura County 99s run a webinar series, and they would like to know first, they would like to share a survey with you that they would like to gather some information on the kinds of webinars you'd like to get, the kind of material you'd like to have presented. So we're going to pop that poll up here in just a second. So when we do that, that one, if you answer yes to it, that should be tied to your email address, and they'll be sending you an email with a link to a survey so they can get some more information on how they'd like to do it. If you don't want to do it, then just check the no box or don't respond, and they will really appreciate having that information. They're trying to spool up on the online world here and create content and get presenters that you want to hear from. So that looks like I'm not seeing much more traffic on those polls, Brian. I guess you could.
All right.
We've got not a lot of ATPs. We've got a lot of instrument ratings here. Good, almost half. GNS experience. A lot of people calling themselves intermediate. That's good. That's more than last time.
That's because they took your last class.
Yeah, right.
And it's after this class.
Yeah, I like that. Only 46, 5% master. Nothing surprises me anymore.
Yeah.
Which is that joke about, the difference between an old pilot and a new pilot, right?
Yeah. The old pilot says, "Oh, there it goes again," or something like that.
Yeah. The new pilot says, "What's it doing now?" And the old pilot says, "Look, it's doing it again."
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Well, so let's close that one out and bring up this last poll on asking whether we can share your email address with the 99s.
I believe that was on the wrap-up one. It was both of them were on there. I'll relaunch it again.
I didn't see it. Huh.
Let's just relaunch it again. Anybody who's on can.
Oh, there it is, down at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is. So
yeah, anybody who's here.
If you don't mind.
In the meantime, while everybody's answering that, I'll just reiterate: if you wanted the Wings credit, you are going to get it if you use the email that you registered for this event. Is the same email address as you use for your FAAsafety.gov email, and you will automatically give Mike a few days to give credit to everybody, and then if you don't see the credit in several days, hit him up. If you have a different email address than that you use, be sure to send it to him in the email. You're going to get a follow-up email to this webinar that will include links to rewatch this webinar, to watch the last one as well, and of course the email address to send Mike if you want to make sure you get your Wings credit.
Yes, exactly. And the YouTube page, again, the links to the recording will be available on Brian's webpage for this activity. I'll put that link up in just a second. And you can just look for Mike Jesh on YouTube, find my channel. I'll have this video, and the other one the other one's already there, along with a little other content I've got. Okay, so let me share this. I wanted to make you aware of a couple other resources available. The Garmin support is kind of drying up for this unit nowadays. There's not much on their website anymore for it, but you can email them if you're an owner of a unit. They should be able to answer your questions, but there are a ton of other resources available too. Pilotsafety.org has a video series, $150 gets you a 6 hours DVD or video series that will walk you.
Blocking the screen again. I don't know if there's a menu up there.
Let me get that out of the way there. Okay, so, and I'm not getting any cut out of any of these things. These are just some resources I found online. Gary Reeves did that pilot safety one. That's a really good one with a video series that will walk through. So you sit there with your unit watching this video, and that will guide you through a lot of processes. Pilotworkshop.com has some books. One of the guys from Pilot Workshop emailed me after the last one and gave me a couple of links. So at about $45 gets you a book specific to the 430 or the 430W or the 530 or the 530W. Peter King wrote a great article on advisory glide paths. If you remember, when I loaded one of those approaches, it said it was going to give you LNAV plus V navigation. There's another new type out there called an LP plus V. And that plus V is an advisory glide path. It's different than a glide slope, and it's not necessarily safe to follow that advisory glide path down. You're not guaranteed to have obstruction clearance using that, and it's not a decision height at the end. Peter's got a great article on that. There's the URL for that, and called Here There Be Dragons, talking about where those dragons live on that type of approach. Gold Seal Ground Schools, Russ Still just put up an article on his website about loading and activating GPS approaches. I talked to Russ a week or two ago, and we're on the same page regarding a lot of this, the risk about using vectors to final. So he shares my concern for doing that, and I really recommend some more reading on that, and we'll cover it more on future shows as well. Last one is on communityaviation.com. Is this whole program, this access to expert instructors from across the country. You can set up individual or small group sessions with people like Rich Stoll, with Doug Stewart, with Larry Jarkey, with Gary Shank, me, and more all the time. My particular page is right here, so you might have to do a screenshot of that to get the full URL. When I checked just before we went live here tonight, it wasn't yet on the expert page, but it should be there soon. On that page, you can book a individual private session with me. It'll cost you a couple of bucks. I got to put some food on the table somehow. But I'm going to continue to try to keep these programs free or voluntary donation. If you send us a little something through Zelle or Venmo, we really appreciate that. Most of all, thank you for coming. Most of you have stayed all the way here to the bitter end and watched our last one. I really appreciate that. You're the reason we do this kind of thing. It's the reason I enjoy it. I really like this high-tech navigation stuff. I know it's confusing to a lot of people, and I'd like to think I mostly have it figured out, and that I can help you figure it out and be a better, safer pilot in your own airplane. And here's the links again for Zelle and Venmo and PayPal. If you'd like to chuck a couple bucks our way, we would certainly appreciate it. And
we learn, and then we earn, and then now we're returned, with the phases of professionalism. And I think that's, you and I both get a lot out of that. Mike, thank you so much for teaching this and taking the time to do it in such a great way. I've learned an immense amount. I was the one answering questions. However, I only answered the ones that I could answer while I was trying to learn from you. And I learned an immense amount during this webinar, and I'm probably going to watch it again.
Great. And for all those who posted questions and chats that we didn't have time to get to, Brian and I do go through them. And like I mentioned at the outset here, we pay attention to those things. We use it to design future programs. And keep in mind, if there's some confusion on something, I know I need to spend more time on that in a future episode. And we do take that all into consideration. So it's not just write-only memory. We do use it. And that is all I have for tonight. So,
all right. Well, listen, thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right. Take care. Good night.
Have a good night.